April of 1995. We're halfway through the 90s, but don't worry, the second half has much more than the first. Super Bomberman 3. Before we talk about the game, though, I should mention this commercial for the game. Recognize her? Remember how Pretty Bomber without her helmet was played by Haruka Sawaguchi? Well, I don't know when exactly it happened, but evidently by the time they were making commercials for Super Bomberman 3, they swapped actresses for her. She is now played by Chiyomi Takahashi. They also gave her a redesign. She now dresses like a cowgirl and is named Honey. Now, helmetless Pretty Bomber was always called Honey.
どうだハニーちゃんの歌えりミスタービビって歌だろもうあれハニーちゃんが歌ってんのか
プリティーボンバーハニーちゃんだよ
ハニー
But the name is much more associated with this new design. Pretty Bomber was often seen with Plasma Bomber chasing Bomberman around, but now she is mostly seen with her new companion, a samurai named Kotetsu, and they sort of became Hudson's unofficial mascots. Here's a song from a bit later promoting Hudson's Caravan event of 1995.
アラームアラームパニックモーニング嫌な一日始まったお姉ちゃんのんびりバスルームなの早くお願い遅刻なの部屋きゃ寝るきゃメイクアップにブレ
You may also notice they changed her hair color to black and shortened it a bit, though in these commercials she still has longer brown hair. The exact timeline is really tricky to get straight, so don't quote me on anything. But is this still the same character as helmetless Pretty Bomber? In October of 95, one of the many non-canon mangas said Honey was a middle school student who was captured by Bagura and turned into Pretty Bomber. This comic, by the way, isn't the one from October of 95. It is a 4-coma from 1996 saying that Plasma Bomber brainwashed her into becoming Pretty Bomber. So, are they the same character? Well, the answer is sort of and sort of not, depending on what Hudson feels like at the moment. This is Bomberman we're talking about here. You should be used to this by now. As for Kotetsu, well, nobody really cares about him. These two are now often seen together chasing Bomberman around. Okay, that tangent out of the way, let's go back to April of 95 and finally talk about Super Bomberman 3, released for the Super Nintendo in Japan and later in Europe, but not in North America. I admit I'm surprised how many of the older games were released everywhere now that I'm finally charting all of this. But here's another one that an entire region missed out on. The story is that in the last episode, Bomberman had defeated the 5 Dastardly Bombers. Oh, now you're making a direct reference to a previous game again, just when we thought they gave up on continuity. But the new villain appears, called Professor Bugler / Buglar, just 20 words later, / Bagura. But wait, he isn't new. He was already there in Bomberman 94. I guess he's new to the Super Nintendo, if indeed these are separate timelines. Also, either his beard grew back really quickly or Shaven Bagura was a different character after all. And Bagura is the creator of the 5 bad bombers here. What? Super 2 said they were created by an alien / aliens, later revealed to be G Ganzu, the floating eyeball thing. This is from the European manual, but the Japanese manual also states Bagura is the creator of the Dastardlies. So at the same time as going out of their way to create some continuity from an earlier game, they also go out of their way to retcon something from it. Throw G Ganzu in the cell with all the other one-off villains we never saw again. But that's just Bomberman for ya. Anyway, Bagura salvages the Dastardlies from the wreck of the ship from Super 2. I guess that in-between stuff with Golem and Pretty and the Panic Bomber games doesn't exist anymore. And he repairs them. Yes, Plasma Bomber is green now. And together they invade the Bomber Nebula, which consists of 5 planets, each of them having the mother computer of the United Planet Federation. Wait, if each planet has one, wouldn't it be a mother computer, or maybe a part of it? The computers helped keep the peace throughout the nebula, but our villains steal the computer chips that ran them and take over the planets. Thus, the Federation calls upon Bomberman to fight the villains, retrieve the computer chips, and restore peace and order to the Bomber Nebula. Of course, none of this is to be confused with the plot to Bomberman 93, where evil Bomberman and his 6 followers steal the 7 vital computer chips to the Pan-Galactic Mother supercomputer in the Magellan solar system, and the Pan-Galactic Federal Bureau calls upon Bomber Cop to restore the chips and save the day. Even has the same music. Phew, that was a mouthful. But now we can say that this is a sequel to Super 2. We boot up the game and the Louis are back. Yay! And co-op mode is back. Haven't seen that since Super 1. The art style is quite different than it was in Super 2. You know, this is way more like Bomberman 94, what with the art style, the 5 worlds followed by Bagura's spaceship, the presence of Bagura and the Louis, and the structure of the levels with bombing nodes to collect a piece of the computer chip in the bubble, being able to select beaten levels, the room with the restored computer chip turning into the boss room. Is this a port of 94 that they decided to also make into a sequel to Super Bomberman 2? The Dastardlies really feel tacked on here. Remember that Magnet Bomber had, you know, a magnet gimmick going on? None of that is here. He's the boss of the jungle forest world, and instead of fighting him, he boards a mech that has nothing to do with him. It's a pretty generic Japanese cultural reference. Well, they had to shoehorn in the Dastardlies somehow. The music for our first 2 worlds are remixes of the extensions of our main theme from the TT16 game. And of course, these stage gimmicks are from 94. The Louis abilities are switched around a bit though. Pink doesn't dance anymore, it jumps. Purple used to do that, but there's no purple here. Green still dashes, blue still kicks bombs into the air, yellow still kicks soft blocks, and the new brown Louis can use line bomb. So that's a Louis ability now instead of a power-up. Much like how Blue's ability kinda replaced the boxing glove. Speaking of power-ups, the penetration bomb got a new icon on the power-up reflecting what the bombs look like now. Golem's mech is very similar to the second boss in 94. And that boss music? That's one of the unused tracks from the TG16 game from 1990. Took them 5 years to use that again. The music for World 3 is from Bomberman 93. World 4 is a desert planet, less like the spooky world from 94 and more like Planet Wither from 93. Even has its music. World 5 is an ice planet, but again uses the Ice World music from 93, and that story was really similar, so Super 3 is sort of a sequel to Super 2, and sort of a port of 94, and sort of a remake of 93. Yeah, that sounds about right. Pretty's mech is a water turtle thing, Brain's mech is 2 cacti, and Plasma's mech is an ice princess, kinda like in 94. These bosses really don't seem like they were designed as mechs. I swear, they just tacked the Dastardlies on here to sort of zoom into them and then escape when they're defeated. Come to think of it, that co-op mode is technically from Super 1. Should I add that to the chart? With all 5 planets' computer chips restored, Bagura's spaceship shows up, so let's go in there and finish the job. These robots that shoot bullets and these nodes with electricity between them actually make for a decent challenge. We don't have Bagura's spaceship music from 94 here, but instead a pretty cool remix of the power-up music from the NES game. After a very long level, we face Bagura in a bomber duel. We can see that he uses those annoying jelly rubber bombs that bounce all over the place, and he stands in a protective purple cube when he feels like it. And he floats around, cause walking is for losers. After that, he summons the Dastardlies for a final phase against a giant combined mech. That music? That's the other unused track from the TG16 game. Wow, both of them. I could add that to the chart, I guess. Here, the Dastardlies gimmicks finally factor into something. The mech uses lasers from Plasma, the heart bombs from Pretty, missiles for Brain, and shoots magnet-shaped hands, all of which indicated above Bagura's head. After enough hits, Bagura is defeated and Bomberman escapes the exploding ship. But something flies away from Bagura. Thumbs up for a job well done. Bomberman returns to that space station and celebrates with the World Bombers. We'll get to them soon. The credits roll, and at the end, oh dear, a brain in a jar. That must be what flew out of Bagura. He ain't finished yet, is he? The end. Concerning those World Bombers, let's talk about multiplayer. It has different selectable characters in all the colors, sort of an amalgamation of the characters from 94 and the World Bombers from Panic Bomber W. My, this chart is getting crowded. The only one who carried over from Panic Bomber W is Metal Bomber, though he much more resembles Kamikaze Bomber from 94 now, what with the sunglasses. And of course, England with UK flag, everyone's favorite. Pretty Bomber is a World Bomber now, hailing from French, corrected to France in the European version, despite her music and Panic W being more of a Spanish flamenco. Remember how Kenya was located in Africa in Panic W? Well, it's now in Brazil apparently, and written with an I, corrected to a Y in the European version again. The character from Kenya is Bomber Uho. Next, please. Good old America is represented with not Bomb Gunman, but Bomber Kid, because who knows? Remember the Jamaican guy, Rasta Bomber? Well, the design was repurposed into Mexican Bomber. Not anything associated with Mexico, just Mexican Bomber. That's like if Bomber Kid was American Bomber. Meanwhile, his belt says USA. Hey, every country that isn't Japan is the exact same, right? Then we have Bomber Cossack from Russia, Bomber Chun from China, and looks like there's someone from Japan. Last time Karaoke Bomber represented Japan, but he's gone, so who do we have for Japan? Maybe like a Samurai Bomber or something? Nope. Just regular Bomberman. As far as actual gameplay goes, this battle mode allows the option of Bad Bomber, which would later be renamed to Revenge Bomber. Now, if you die, you can still throw bombs into the stage. You can't get back in though, so it's really just for petty revenge. And if you win, there's an optional soccer minigame so you can aim for a power-up to start with. Gold Bomber is present if you win a match, but only if you enter a password. Speaking of which, here's Pretty Bomber. Put in a password and she'll take her helmet off. Yep, still brown hair. Honey exists at this point, but not entirely yet, sort of, maybe, depending on how you look at it. This is Bomberman after all. Overall, I do miss the art style Super 2 had going on, but if this style is more your thing, hey, more power to you. One last thing to mention. All those enemies, those are copied from Hudson's earlier Neotopia games, so yeah, that seems about right. Now this next thing, the release date is a bit iffy. It is an anime short called This, which translates to Thanks for the Courage, Bomberman, I Will Hear. This is sometimes referred to as the Bomberman OVA, or original video animation, though that name is a bit misleading. See, it isn't so much a Bomberman video as it is an earthquake safety video with some Bomberman shenanigans thrown in there for the kids. Which earthquake? Why, the Great Hanshin earthquake, of course, which occurred in mid-January of 1995 and killed many thousands of people and destroyed lots of buildings in southern Japan, in and around the city of Kobe. The disaster caused a push for more earthquake safety awareness, and as such, even Bomberman had a take on it. When exactly this video was released in theaters is really iffy, though. All the Japanese sites seem to say it was in 1996, but none of them provide a source for it or a more exact date. The copyright in the video itself and the posters, meanwhile, is for 1995, and the Shrine Place lists April 13th, 1995 as the release date. From what I can tell, nobody has made subtitles for this short, but the Shrine Place has a plot summary and it isn't too difficult to figure out what's going on. The short stars a girl named Riko Watanabe, living with her little sister and parents in Kobe. Her parents are deaf and they communicate with actual Japanese sign language here. This is all based on the real-life experiences of the actual Riko Watanabe who survived the Great Hanshin earthquake together with her deaf parents. She made front-page news back in the day for her courage in volunteering in the shelters and raising awareness for people with hearing disabilities, which she does to this day. She's also a singer and songwriter and runs her own blog, so go check that out if you want. Anyway, in this short, Riko likes to draw Bomberman. Cut to some Bomberman shenanigans. Pretty Bomber gives White Bomber a present, which turns out to be a bomb. Big surprise. Then Bomber Chun blows him up with a power bomb. Thanks a lot, old man. Now we're in a game show hosted by Black Bomber. What is this image? Our contestants are Pretty, Bagura, Louie, and White Bomber who thinks it's his face, but nope. It's a power socket, silly. Metal Bomber is the camera guy, I guess? But it's late now, so Riko goes to bed. During the night, the earthquake happens and her parents are injured and the phone is out. But they manage to find their way to a shelter where her parents' hearing disability causes a misunderstanding. They can't understand what this angry guy is saying, and he's about to beat them up when Rico rushes in and explains that they are deaf, resolving the situation. He even comes back later with a written apology letter. The little sister isn't buying it, but he gives her some snacks, and it's all good. Cameo of series creator Shinichi Nakamoto. Rico starts helping out at the shelter, gives this old lady some hot tea. This is so wholesome. The kids in the shelter start getting rowdy, so Rico shares her self-drawn Bomberman comics with them. Cuts to Bomberman fighting with those two cacti who were a boss in Super 3. Then an earthquake happens and Bomberman is buried in the rubble. The cacti laugh at him, but then they get angrily stared at by the 5 dastardly bombers. Wait, in the game they were a mech piloted by brain bombers, so how are they acting on their own here? Anyway, the cacti feel bad about laughing at Bomberman's predicament, and Bagura says... Oh, that's his voice now? So the cacti help Bomberman out of there and carry him to safety. A bunch of the world bombers put out a fire, and hey, remember Mexican bombers built that said USA? Here they corrected it to UMS, United Mexican States. Black Bomber and Louie carry Bomber Chun around in a stretcher, and we cut back to the real world. Eventually, Rico leaves the shelter and tells her class all about her experiences. Even the mom comes to class, and why is this so heartwarming? Finally, Bomberman gives us some earthquake safety tips. Always keep an emergency pack, attach cupboards to the walls, turn off electronic devices, help out the elderly and the injured, wear a helmet, and don't forget to play Bomberman. I can't make jokes about this. This is so wholesome! You know, in Bomberman we blow people up, evil scientists want to take over the universe and escape as a brain in a jar, but they all put their differences aside to help each other out here. I just can't.